One swipe sank a yacht, another destroyed a dynasty, but the Maid's purchase toppled governments. Now, as protests rage and crackdowns turn violent, the real question isn't what she bought, it's what comes next. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get into the story. It was a Thursday evening in August of 2025 when the chandeliers of the Williams estate glowed like galaxies suspended over marble floors. Each crystal, catching the light, seemed intent on reminding every guest that this was not a house but a kingdom, and its king, Steve Williams, ruled it with the arrogance of a man who had long since forgotten what ordinary meant. Williams, a millionaire many times over, stood at the center of his ballroom in a tailored brown tuxedo, his expression half mischief, half boredom. In his hand he held 6 sleek envelopes. Inside each rested a weapon more powerful than crowns or titles. A black credit card with no limit. The kind whispered about in first-class lounges. The kind that could buy a Picasso at breakfast and a private island before dinner. Before him stood 6 women. They sparkled in satin, sequins, and jewels, each eyeing the envelopes as if they contained keys to another universe. They were not contestants, not officially, but in truth that's exactly what they had become. The latest players in Williams's eccentric test of character. Yet among them, standing just behind in her modest maid's uniform, was a figure no one had expected. Stephanie R. Leal, Williams's housemaid. Her hands were folded neatly, her eyes steady, her presence so understated that some guests had nearly overlooked her. The idea for this night had taken root months earlier. On June 21, 2025, after reading yet another cruel headline mocking his string of failed romances, Williams had finally snapped. The London Times called him, "the man who can buy everything but love." The line stung worse than any financial loss. So he conceived a challenge, a little experiment, equal parts science and theater. If love could not be bought, then perhaps it could be revealed by how women handled the most intoxicating tool he possessed, unrestrained access to wealth. Each of you, Williams declared now, voice ringing through the glittering hall, will receive one of these cards. Spend it however you wish. In 7 days you'll return to me, not to show what you bought, but who you are. The women's laughter rippled, nervy and eager. Their eyes sparkled like predators catching scent of prey. Then Williams turned, holding out the last envelope. "And Stephanie," he said, "don't think you're exempt. Tonight, you're not just my maid. You're a participant." The ballroom hushed. Some of the women gasped, others stifled snickers. A maid with a limitless card? It was like giving the crown jewels to a woman with no pockets. Stephanie stepped forward, curtsied lightly, and accepted the envelope. Her face betrayed no shock, no greed, no fear. Just composure. By Monday, August 11th, London's gossip press was already buzzing. One woman had flown straight to Paris, dropping millions on couture within hours. Another had prowled into a Knightsbridge showroom and driven out in a Lamborghini. A third was chartering a yacht across the Mediterranean. The purchases grew louder, more absurd, more desperate with each passing day. Instagram feeds exploded with photos of gowns, engines, and champagne towers. But Stephanie left no trace. No trips abroad, no paparazzi sightings, no glittering evidence. She was seen, instead, in her modest East London flat, sipping tea on a balcony, a second-hand book in her lap. Whispers swirled. Had she even used the card at all? On August 18th, Williams summoned them all back to the estate. The women arrived in their finery, armed with tales of yachts and fashion weeks, desperate for applause. They laughed and interrupted one another, voices colliding like sparrows squabbling over crumbs. Williams listened, smiling thinly. Then his gaze shifted to the maid. "And you, Stephanie?" he asked. "What did you buy?" She handed him a thin folder. Inside were receipts, donations to 3 children's hospitals in London, scholarships established for working-class girls, funds sent to rebuild a Guatemalan school destroyed in July's earthquake. The chandeliers above seemed to dim. For once, Williams, who had seen fortunes rise and collapse like sandcastles, was speechless. The other women shifted uncomfortably, their glittering gowns suddenly feeling like costumes in a satire. The revelation hit the room like thunder. Stephanie had turned a limitless card not into vanity, but into humanity. Williams cleared his throat. "And did you spend all of it?" Stephanie shook her head and pulled out the black card, untouched. "I never needed it for myself. Your wealth doesn't create character. It only magnifies it. I used a fraction for others, and the rest I return." Laughter from the other women died instantly. Williams's smirk faltered. Stephanie's eyes, calm and steady, fixed on him. "You thought this was a test of us. But it was always a test of you. Do you see women as ornaments you can measure with money, or as people who can surprise you?" The silence that followed was sharper than glass. For the first time in years, Williams felt not like the master of a game, but its pawn. By September 1, 2025, the story had gone global. Paparazzi photos of the lavish spenders filled tabloids, but it was Stephanie's quiet receipts that captured hearts. When one scholarship recipient posted a tearful video, "A maid changed my life," it reached 5 million views in 2 days. At a press conference, Williams stood beside her and announced the creation of the Stephanie Foundation, funding education worldwide. Cameras flashed like fireworks. For once, the headline wasn't his fortune. It was her name. And so the maid who had been mocked, dismissed, nearly overlooked, became the heroine of a millionaire's experiment. Stephanie, however, remained herself. She returned to her uniform, her modest apartment, her dog-eared books. When asked why she declined a penthouse Williams offered, she answered with her usual wry wit. "Spotlights are heavy. Lamps are enough." And with that, the story of 6 cards had begun, with 5 women chasing glitter and 1 maid rewriting the rules of wealth. On Friday, August 8, 2025, Clarissa Beaumont touched down at Charles de Gaulle Airport with Williams's black card burning a hole in her Louis Vuitton clutch. Paris, the city of love, fashion, and debt disguised as elegance, was her chosen arena. If Williams's experiment was a stage, then she was determined to play queen, muse, and goddess all at once. The paparazzi didn't need leaks. Clarissa was her own press agent. Within an hour of landing, she had live-streamed herself striding into Avenue Montaigne, champagne flute in hand, declaring, "Paris, I've come to rescue you from boredom." By noon she was seated front row at Dior, barking instructions at assistants. By dusk she had rescued a crimson gown priced at 480,000 euros, then 2 more dresses for balance. Paris embraced her with open wallets. Chanel draped her in pearls, Saint Laurent cloaked her in sequins, and Cartier fastened a diamond collar on her neck that made pedestrians squint in the sunlight. She floated through Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré like a monarch in exile returning home. On August 9th, she swept into the Ritz Paris, announcing to the concierge, "Suite Imperiale. Charge it to destiny." She redecorated the suite within hours, tossing the hotel's gilded decor aside for her own custom silks shipped in from Florence. Her Instagram bloomed with captions. "When life gives you limits, get a card without one. Some queens are born. Others are swiped." Her following doubled in 3 days. But in Paris, attention is as sharp as a guillotine. By August 11th, French tabloids began to sniff. Le Monde wrote, "La femme qui quitte tout, mais appartient à rien." The woman who buys everything but belongs to nothing. Fashion critics whispered that she was not collecting couture, but hoarding it, reselling pieces through backdoor channels at a fraction of the price, like a duchess running a pawnshop. Worse still, she failed to pay the required import duties. One house, angered by her arrogance, leaked an email where Clarissa had demanded a private fashion show at 3 a.m., because midnight feels common. The backlash spread faster than perfume at an airport duty-free. While Clarissa drowned Paris in sequins, Stephanie quietly booked a one-way ticket to Toulouse. She was spotted not in boutiques, but in a modest school, speaking with teachers about broken windows and underfunded science labs. With part of her funds, she replaced textbooks that still referred to Pluto as a planet. When asked by a journalist why she didn't stop in Paris, Stephanie chuckled. "Paris doesn't need me, but children with torn pages do." The quote, barely noticed at first, would later circle the internet, a knife to Clarissa's shimmering balloon. On August 13th, Clarissa unveiled her piece de resistance, a dramatic midnight walk through Place Vendôme in a custom gown rumored to cost €3.1 million. She hired violinists, photographers, even a drone crew. But instead of awe, the stunt drew ridicule. A video captured a drunk tourist yelling, "Is this a wedding or a funeral for good taste?" The clip went viral in minutes. By morning, French satirists had rebranded her as Madame Deficit 2.0, comparing her excess to Marie Antoinette's infamy. Memes flooded TikTok. Clarissa photoshopped holding baguettes instead of gowns, diamonds replaced by croissants. Her kingdom of couture was collapsing under its own absurdity. Williams, watching from London, received a confidential dossier on August 14th. The French government had flagged Clarissa's spending spree for investigation. Unpaid taxes, illegal resales, and suspected laundering. The black card had not only exposed her vanity, it had exposed her recklessness to the law. Williams exhaled slowly, realizing his experiment was less of a game and more of a fuse he had lit across continents. By August 15th, Clarissa returned to London, her luggage heavier than a small bank vault. Paparazzi swarmed as customs officials seized half her gowns, citing incomplete declarations. Humiliated, she tried to spin the scandal. On Instagram Live, she ranted, "Paris envies me. France fears me. Couture is not clothes, it is destiny." But the comments told another story. "Destiny can't pay taxes, hun." Another quipped, "Even Marie Antoinette kept her receipts." Meanwhile, Stephanie's quiet work in Toulouse surfaced. A French teacher posted photos of smiling children with new books, captioned, "While one woman spent millions on gowns, another gave us futures." The contrast was devastating. By late August, Clarissa had retreated from social life. Her once flawless reputation tattered like an overworn hem. Fashion houses refused to lend her gowns. Paris had not crowned her queen, it had exiled her jester. Stephanie, by contrast, received a handwritten letter from the mayor of Toulouse thanking her for her contribution. She folded it neatly, slipped it into her book as a bookmark, and went on polishing silverware at Williams's estate. When Williams teased her, "No gowns from Paris, Stephanie?" she answered with a smile, "Silk wrinkles. But books stay open." On Saturday, August 9, 2025, Cassandra Doyle stood in a Knightsbridge showroom surrounded by glossy machines that looked less like cars and more like missiles disguised in paint. With Williams's black card in her hand, she felt destiny humming under her manicured nails. She bypassed the Rolls-Royces, dismissed the Bentleys, and stopped before a lime-green Lamborghini Aventador. Its curves were wicked, its engine a beast waiting to roar. Cassandra leaned against it like a queen claiming her throne. "How much?" she asked the salesman. "With this card." The salesman chuckled nervously. "For you, madam. However fast you want it." Within an hour, Cassandra roared out of the showroom, exhaust screaming through London like a declaration of war on subtlety. By August 10th, she was a sensation. Paparazzi snapped her cruising through Hyde Park, hair whipping in a wind, sunglasses perched like armor. She posted a video of herself accelerating down Park Lane, captioned, "Happiness is measured in horsepower." The clip hit 1 million views in 12 hours. Influencers envied her. Tabloids praised her daring. For once, Cassandra felt she wasn't just another name orbiting Williams's wealth. She was the star, the wheel-wielding goddess of speed. But fast lanes always end at sharp turns. On August 12th, disaster arrived quietly. Cassandra parked the Lamborghini outside a Mayfair club, flashing keys like jewels. Hours later, when she emerged from a champagne blur, the car was gone. At first she thought it was towed. By dawn, police confirmed, stolen. The thieves left a mocking note where the car had been. Even gods walk home sometimes. The story exploded across tabloids. Lamborghini heiress loses her throne. Memes flooded Instagram. Cassandra photoshopped walking with grocery bags, or her neon green car replaced by a lime scooter. While Cassandra scrambled to spin her humiliation, Stephanie was photographed quietly boarding the Underground at Liverpool Street. No cameras had followed her. Just a commuter who recognized her from news coverage of Williams's Maid with the card. The photo showed her holding a book, smiling faintly as she gave up her seat to an elderly man. The caption read, "She could buy a Lamborghini, but she chose the Central line." By evening, the image had gone viral. Stephanie's humility had accidentally outshone Cassandra's horsepower. On August 13th, Cassandra went live on Instagram to reclaim dignity. She stood in front of a rented Ferrari, declaring, "Cars come and go, but legends never stall." Williams, reviewing documents that evening, discovered a darker truth. Cassandra hadn't been living freely. She'd been drowning in debt. Creditors had circled her for years. The Lamborghini wasn't a new chapter. It was an escape attempt written in neon paint. The theft hadn't humiliated her. It had exposed her. Williams sighed, realizing again that the black cards didn't corrupt. They revealed. By August 15th, Cassandra's downfall was complete. Debt collectors swarmed, gossip sites mocked her endlessly, and the hashtag Park Lane pedestrian trended for 3 straight days. Meanwhile, Stephanie's subway photograph continued climbing. Evening news anchors framed it as the stark contrast of humility versus excess. When a journalist asked Stephanie why she didn't buy a car, she answered simply, "I already know how to arrive. Why waste money proving it?" Her words cut sharper than any engine roar. Cassandra retreated from public view, reportedly living with relatives in Surrey, far from neon paint and cameras. Rumors swirled that she still dreamt of reclaiming her Lamborghini throne, but in reality, her empire of speed had sputtered out in less than a week. Stephanie, meanwhile, carried on polishing silverware at Williams's estate. When Williams teased her, "Not tempted by horsepower, Stephanie?" she replied with a dry smile, "Engines stall. Legs don't." And with that, the Lamborghini heiress became another cautionary tale in Williams's unfolding experiment. On Sunday, August 10, 2025, Miranda Carlisle boarded a yacht in Monaco that looked less like a boat and more like a floating palace built to mock gravity. With Williams's black card in her possession, she had signed the papers for a €72 million vessel without blinking. The yacht was christened La Liberté, though those who knew Miranda's taste suspected it should have been called the Ego. Its decks gleamed with imported teak, its cabins dripped with velvet, and its staff of 30 bowed as though Poseidon himself had joined their payroll. Finally, Miranda announced to her entourage as champagne corks burst into the Mediterranean air, "A stage worthy of me." By August 11th, her Instagram was a digital opera of indulgence. She posed with magnums of Dom Perignon, lounged in infinity pools overlooking infinity seas, and hosted dinners where the menu included gold-dusted oysters flown in from Tokyo. Guests included minor royals, fading pop stars, and influencers so desperate for clout they would have paid to mop the deck. Miranda filmed them all with the caption, "The Mediterranean belongs to those who dare." For 3 days, her yacht became the epicenter of European gossip. Headlines gushed, "Carlisle reigns at sea." But the Mediterranean, unlike Instagram, has no filters. On August 13th, the weather turned. Off the coast of Corsica, black clouds muscled across the horizon. The captain advised turning back. Miranda, draped in a silver gown that glimmered like lightning, laughed. "A storm is just nature trying to get a seat at my table." She ordered the party to continue, violins competing with the howl of the wind. But by nightfall, waves slammed against La Liberté with brutal indifference. Champagne glasses shattered, silk gowns clung like drowning flags, and guests scrambled below deck. Miranda stood stubborn on the bow, arms spread as though auditioning for a nautical remake of Titanic. Only when a wave nearly swept her overboard did security drag her inside. While Miranda defied Poseidon, Stephanie spent the same night walking the Thames embankment in London, handing out blankets she'd purchased with a fraction of her card. She gave one to a man huddled under Blackfriars Bridge. When he asked why, she replied softly, "Because storms don't only happen at sea." A passing student recorded the exchange. The video, humble and unpolished, spread quickly. The Maid Who Calmed Storms. By August 14th, La Liberté limped into port, battered and bruised. The damage was severe. Splintered railings, flooded cabins, lawsuits from terrified guests. Insurance investigators swarmed like gulls. Miranda, once radiant, now appeared haggard and shaken in tabloid photos. Still, she attempted bravado, telling reporters, "A queen does not fear storms. Storms fear queens." But the footage told another story. Shaky clips leaked of her screaming orders, clinging to railings, mascara running like rivers. Public sympathy evaporated. She had not conquered the sea, she had been mocked by it. Williams, receiving a report from Monaco, discovered the worst detail. Miranda hadn't even purchased the yacht outright. She had leased it, committing to payments she could never sustain. The black card had bought her 3 days of fantasy, but left her legally shackled to debts that would hound her for years. It wasn't indulgence. It was entrapment disguised as champagne. By August 16th, Miranda was facing lawsuits from guests who claimed negligence, and creditors who demanded repayment. The once proud heiress of the sea was now reduced to pleading with lawyers on land. Meanwhile, Stephanie's video with the blanket had surpassed 10 million views. Commenters drew the contrast mercilessly. One woman drowned in a storm. Another calmed one. When asked by a journalist why she chose blankets instead of yachts, Stephanie smirked. "A blanket keeps someone warm. A yacht keeps your ego cold." Her words ricocheted through news cycles, sharp as salt spray. By late August, Miranda abandoned her social accounts and retreated to Switzerland, reportedly seeking peace in the mountains. Her yacht sat unused in Monaco, a monument to vanity, its nameplate La Liberté rusting in the sea air. Stephanie, meanwhile, returned to her quiet duties at Williams's estate. When Williams teased her one evening, "You don't want to sail the Mediterranean, Stephanie?" She chuckled, shaking her head. "Why, Mr. Williams? The Thames flows just fine, and it doesn't send bills afterward." Another card, another downfall. The sea had tested Miranda and found her hollow. Stephanie, without leaving land, had again proven unsinkable. On Thursday, August 14, 2025, Vanessa Moreau swept into Graff Diamonds on New Bond Street with Williams's black card balanced delicately between her fingers, like a magician preparing her final trick. Vanessa wasn't just a socialite. She fancied herself a living jewel. "Skin is boring without carats," she once told a stylist. Now she had no ceiling. By noon, she owned a 45-carat necklace priced at £8.6 million. By 3 o'clock, she added 2 ruby rings at £2.1 million each. Before the shop closed, she pointed lazily at a sapphire tiara. Something blue for balance. The staff obeyed like courtiers bowing to their empress. Later, one would confess, it felt like selling oxygen to someone who already owned the sky. On August 15th, Vanessa unveiled her spoils at Claridge's Hotel. Draped in diamonds, she descended the grand staircase as if auditioning to replace the crown jewels. Headlines gushed. Vanessa Moreau, the walking vault. When jewelry becomes geography. Her Instagram caption read, "Some women wear clothes. I wear history." The likes poured in. But in shadows beyond the flashing bulbs, darker eyes studied her, not as a star but as prey. By August 16th, she sensed them. A black SUV idling too often near her hotel. A man watching her from across cafes. She dismissed it at first. Diamonds attract admirers. But admiration can turn to appetite. By August 17th, she hired private security. Guards flanked her, yet unease clung to her shoulders like a stolen shawl. While Vanessa armored herself in sparkle, Stephanie used a fraction of her card to buy pearl bracelets for an orphanage in Croydon. Each bracelet cost less than one of Vanessa's shoelaces, but when the girls slipped them on, their smiles were brighter than diamonds under chandeliers. When asked why pearls, Stephanie replied with her usual dry wit, "Pearls are patient. They take years to form. Diamonds just sit around being loud." The quote spread quietly, a gentle but devastating contrast. On the night of August 18th, Vanessa attended a charity gala at the V&A Museum. Diamonds blazing across her neck. She had turned herself into a lighthouse of wealth, and the thieves came as moths. 2 masked men stormed the event, armed and precise. Within minutes, the necklace was cut away, the rings torn from her hands. The assailants vanished into London's night. The footage, captured on iPhones, hit the internet before Vanessa had even stopped screaming. Her face, frozen mid-horror, became a viral meme. When your drip gets stolen. Vanessa went from crown jewel to clown jewel. The glitter that had made her untouchable now made her ridiculous. Investigators soon discovered the cruelest detail. It hadn't been chance. Vanessa's own assistant had betrayed her, selling her itinerary to black market dealers. Loyalty, it seemed, couldn't be purchased, not even with rubies. Williams, reading the police report, felt a rare pang of pity. The black card hadn't merely revealed vanity. It had painted a target. By August 20th, Vanessa's empire of sparkle lay in ruins. Insurance refused coverage, citing reckless exhibitionism. The thieves disappeared, her assistant fled abroad, and Vanessa, attempting damage control, went live on Instagram wearing the sapphire tiara. "I am still royalty," she shouted, mascara streaking. The internet responded with merciless laughter. Memes of the crying queen of tiaras flooded TikTok. Meanwhile, a video of orphans in Croydon proudly displaying their pearl bracelets surpassed 5 million views. Stephanie's quiet act now outshone Vanessa's lost fortune. By September, Vanessa retreated to a countryside estate, where rumors claimed she slept surrounded by security cameras, clutching fake jewelry as comfort. Her diamonds were gone, her trust betrayed, her throne dissolved. Back at the estate, Williams teased Stephanie. "Not tempted by an £8 million necklace?" She raised an eyebrow. "Why, Mr. Williams? I already own something rarer." "And what's that?" he asked. "Peace of mind." And so another card closed its story, a queen dethroned by betrayal, and a maid whose pearls proved priceless. It was Thursday, August 21st, 2025, and the Williams estate outside London gleamed under a stubborn summer sun. 6 weeks of indulgence, scandal, and collapse had brought the 6 women back under one roof. The stage was set, not for champagne or confetti, but for judgment. Williams sat at the long mahogany table, his black cards stacked neatly before him like a deck of fate. Around him, the women gathered, each carrying the weight of their choices. Clarissa's sequined gowns looked dull under the sober light. Cassandra's sunglasses couldn't hide her humiliation. Miranda's voice trembled like an unmoored mast. Vanessa's fingers, once dripping with rubies, now clutched only air. And at the far end of the table, almost overlooked in her plain blouse and steady eyes, sat Stephanie. Williams broke the silence. "When I gave you these cards, I wanted to see not just how you'd spend money, but how money would spend you." The words landed like stones. Clarissa sniffed. Defensive. "Paris adored me." "Paris mocked you," Williams cut in, sliding forward a newspaper with the headline Madame Deficit 2.0. Cassandra tried bravado. "Cars are fleeting. But legends don't get their engines stolen," Williams replied, tossing her the viral meme of her beside the scooter. Miranda raised her chin. "The storm was historic." "And you were history's fool," Williams said flatly. Vanessa tried tears. "I was betrayed." "You betrayed yourself first," he said, voice calm as steel. One by one, their empires collapsed again, this time under words sharper than swords. Finally, Williams turned toward Stephanie. The room seemed to exhale. "And you, Stephanie, what did you buy?" Her answer was so soft it felt like a thread of air. "Warmth. Pages. Pearls." The others scoffed. Clarissa sneered. "She bought trinkets." Cassandra muttered. "She's just polishing her halo." But Williams lifted a folder. Inside were headlines, viral posts, and photographs of Stephanie's acts. The orphan girls with pearls, the man under Blackfriars Bridge, the children in Toulouse reading fresh textbooks. "These," Williams said, "are more valuable than every gown, car, yacht, and diamond you paraded." Clarissa slammed her fist. "You can't compare us to her. She's a maid." Williams stood, his voice thunderous. "Exactly. A maid humbled you all. While you tried to crown yourselves, she made herself human." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Then came the twist, the part none expected. Williams gathered the black cards and slid them into his jacket. From his pocket, he drew out a simple envelope and handed it to Stephanie. Inside was a letter of inheritance. Property. Shares. Security. Stephanie's eyes widened. "Mr. Williams, this is too much." "It's not charity," Williams said firmly. "It's recognition. You didn't just pass the test. You redefined it." The others sat frozen, their diamonds and gowns suddenly worthless ornaments against the raw gravity of legacy. Clarissa burst into tears. Cassandra cursed under her breath. Miranda stared as though the sea had betrayed her. Vanessa whispered, "It should have been me." But Stephanie didn't gloat. She stood, smoothing her blouse, and bowed her head slightly. "Wealth is loud. Dignity is quiet. You asked us to choose, and I chose quiet." Her words spread across the table like wildfire. For once, none dared interrupt. By September 2025, the world knew the story. Headlines crowned Stephanie not a maid, but a legend. The woman who spent millions on kindness. While they bought thrones, she built futures. Williams's experiment became the most discussed social trial of the decade. Economists debated it. Psychologists studied it. Late-night hosts joked about it. Note to self, never give your girlfriend a black card unless she's also your maid. But beyond the noise, one truth endured. The maid with the quiet eyes had triumphed where queens, heiresses, and sirens had failed. One evening in October 2025, Williams and Stephanie walked the estate gardens, autumn leaves crunching underfoot. "Stephanie," he said, "did you ever imagine this ending?" She smiled faintly. "Imagine? No. Hope. Always." They paused by the fountain, its water catching the fading light. Williams looked at her not as his maid, but as his equal, perhaps his better. "Stephanie," he murmured, "you've left me speechless." And for a man who owned everything words could describe, silence was the greatest gift of all. By November 2025, Williams's experiment was no longer a private drama. It had become a public obsession. Newspapers called it the Black Card Trials. Professors dissected it in lectures. Talk shows turned it into satire. And social media, that endless court of judgment, declared winners and losers in memes sharper than guillotines. At the center of it all stood Stephanie, who wanted none of it. Stephanie couldn't even walk to the corner grocer without whispers. Children pointed. "That's her, Mom. The maid with the card." Cameras followed her to bus stops, charity events, even the laundromat. When one reporter asked her, "How does it feel to be a global symbol of humility?" she replied dryly, "Mostly inconvenient. Try folding socks with a flashbulb in your face." The quote trended worldwide. Meanwhile, the 6 women scattered like broken crowns. Clarissa Beaumont fled to Dubai, attempting to rebuild her brand. She live-streamed herself at luxury brunches, but every comment compared her sequins to Stephanie's books. Cassandra Doyle signed with a reality TV show titled Fast Lane to rock bottom. It flopped after 2 episodes. Miranda Carlisle sold La Liberté at a humiliating loss. Tabloids called it the shipwreck of vanity. Vanessa Moreau was last seen in Geneva, shadowed by bodyguards, still refusing to wear fake jewelry. Each tried to rewrite their story, but history, and the internet had already written it for them. Williams himself did not escape untouched. Some praised his experiment as genius. Others called it cruel, even predatory. On December 2, 2025, a panel at the London School of Economics debated him. One scholar sneered, "He played God with women's lives." Another countered, "No, he revealed the gods we already worship." Williams, for once, stayed silent. He knew the truth. The cards had not destroyed those women. They had only unmasked them. By Christmas 2025, Williams offered Stephanie a position beyond maid service, stewardship of his charitable foundation. The announcement made front-page news. Her response shocked everyone. She declined. "I don't need a title to help people," she explained. "I just need time and enough money to buy the right kind of blanket." The remark infuriated pundits and delighted the public. One late-night host quipped, "Stephanie just rejected more power in one sentence than most politicians dream of in a lifetime." On January 1, 2026, during London's New Year's Day parade, a float appeared, a giant golden credit card split in half, with performers dressed as queens, sirens, and heiresses chasing after it. At the center, A woman in a simple dress handed out toy books and blankets to the crowd. The audience roared. It was satire on wheels, and Stephanie hadn't even attended. The 6 women, watching from their various exiles, realized the cruel truth. Their downfalls had become carnival entertainment. But fate hadn't finished its script. In February 2026, Williams revealed that he had kept one card unused. The 7th card. When asked why, he smiled cryptically. Because experiments are never over. They evolve. Speculation ignited. Who would receive it? Another heiress? A politician? A stranger plucked from the crowd? Stephanie warned him quietly. Be careful, Mr. Williams. Sometimes curiosity doesn't kill the cat. It kills the world. Her words hung heavier than prophecy. On March 15, 2026, Williams announced he would auction the 7th card. Not for money, but for a promise. The winner would be the person with the most compelling plan to use unlimited wealth for good. Applications poured in, from Nobel laureates, Silicon Valley moguls, even a 14-year-old boy who promised to buy every stray dog a home. The internet went feral. Hashtags trended daily. For weeks, suspense burned like a fuse. And through it all, Stephanie remained calm, folding laundry and smiling faintly at the chaos. When asked if she would apply, she shook her head. I already proved what I needed to. Let someone else dance with the devil. By spring 2026, the world wasn't just watching Williams's cards. It was living in their shadow. The experiment had turned into a cultural mirror, reflecting greed, humility, betrayal, and grace. And at its quiet center stood Stephanie, the maid who never asked for the spotlight, but who had redefined wealth with the simplest of acts. As Williams confided to her one April evening, Stephanie, I gave away black cards to reveal character. But I didn't expect to find my conscience in you. She smiled softly. That's because consciences aren't bought, Mr. Williams. They're earned. The world waited for the 7th card. But Williams already knew the truth. No matter who held it next, no one could ever outshine the maid who had left him speechless. It was May 12, 2026, a Tuesday damp with spring rain in London, when Williams finally unveiled the fate of the mysterious 7th card. The world had waited for months, speculating, fighting, even betting in underground forums. Who would inherit a passport to unlimited power? Williams chose the Royal Albert Hall for the announcement. The venue thrummed with anticipation. Journalists, billionaires, activists, and influencers filled the red seats like disciples awaiting revelation. Cameras hovered. Live streams counted millions of viewers. Stephanie sat in the shadows, invited but reluctant, her plain dress a quiet rebellion against the jeweled gowns and tailored suits. She had begged Williams not to play this game again. But Williams had always been a man in love with spectacle. The stage was empty except for a clear podium and a velvet box. Inside the box, the last black card. Williams stepped into the spotlight. Wealth is a mirror, he began. 6 cards showed us vanity, hunger, storms, and betrayal. 1 card showed us humility. Today, we decide what the 7th card will show. He invited finalists to present their pledges. A Silicon Valley billionaire promised to end climate change by building floating cities. A duke pledged to restore Britain's crumbling castles. A pop star vowed to fund space tourism for fans. And then, trembling but determined, a 14-year-old boy took the stage. His plan. I'd buy every stray dog in the world a home. And if there's money left, I'd help people too. The audience gasped, not at the ambition, but at the innocence. Williams prepared to crown the boy, his hand hovering over the velvet box. But Stephanie rose from her seat. Cameras swung. The audience buzzed. Mr. Williams, she said, her voice carrying despite its softness. Have you learned nothing? You're not choosing who gets a card. You're choosing who carries a burden they don't yet understand. Even a child. The hall went silent. You don't test character by handing out temptation, she continued. You test it by teaching people how not to need it. Her words cut deeper than any jewel-encrusted speech. For a long, breathless moment, even Williams had no answer. Suddenly, the boy walked toward Stephanie. He held her gaze and whispered into the microphone. Then maybe you should keep it. Because you're the only one who knows how not to waste it. The hall erupted, some cheering, some booing. The billionaire shouted, the Duke stormed, the pop star wept mascara. But the boy's words hung heavier than all their promises combined. Stephanie shook her head, refusing. No. The world doesn't need another card. It needs fewer. And then came the revelation. Williams lifted the velvet box, opened it, and revealed that the seventh card was fake. Plastic. Worthless. Gasps swept the hall. There was never a seventh card, Williams declared. The final test wasn't about money. It was about desire. Who craved it? Who resisted it? And who saw through it? His gaze fell on Stephanie. And once again she has left us all speechless. The crowd erupted. Chaos, applause, outrage. The billionaire stormed out, the Duke threatened lawsuits, the pop star collapsed theatrically on stage. But the boy smiled at Stephanie, as though he already understood something the grown-ups never would. Later, reporters swarmed her. How do you feel about winning again? Stephanie's reply was simple. You can't win a game you refuse to play. The line ricocheted across headlines. By June 2026, the seventh card had become legend, a story without numbers, only lessons. Williams's ruse was debated in parliaments, classrooms, and pubs. Some called it cruel, others brilliant. But one fact was undeniable. Stephanie had once again risen above the noise. That summer, Williams confided to her in the garden, where roses climbed the estate walls. You've become the conscience of my fortune, Stephanie. She smiled faintly. Then do me a favor, Mr. Williams. What's that? Stop testing people. Start trusting them. And for the first time, Williams realized his grandest experiment had not been about the cards at all. It had been about her. By July 2026, the ripple of Williams's experiment had swelled into a tidal wave. What began as a private test of character now played out on the world stage. Governments debated it. Universities taught it. Social media lived it. And everywhere the question echoed, what would you do with a black card? CNN ran a week-long series titled The Black Card Society. BBC produced a documentary, complete with dramatic music and reenactments of Clarissa's gowns and Miranda's sinking yacht. Netflix announced a miniseries. Meanwhile, on TikTok, teenagers filmed themselves pretending to spend invisible black cards. One viral clip showed a boy swiping an imaginary card at his mother, shouting, "Unlimited nuggets." Even parliaments joined in. In Italy, a senator quipped, "If we had Stephanie running the budget, maybe we'd finally break even." The chamber erupted in laughter, though the finance minister did not smile. For the six who had fallen, the global circus was unbearable. Clarissa attempted a comeback in Dubai with a new fashion line called Deficit Chic. It was mocked mercilessly. Cassandra retreated to Surrey, rarely leaving her cottage except to jog at dawn, hood pulled tight. Locals whispered she had nightmares of scooters. Miranda sued the yacht company for structural betrayal, but the case was thrown out. Tabloids dubbed her queen of sinking causes. Vanessa became a recluse in Geneva, trusting no one, even her reflection. Her once dazzling diamonds were replaced with paranoia. Their legacies had not just cracked. They had calcified into punchlines. Stephanie, meanwhile, tried to return to anonymity. She continued her duties at the Williams estate, polishing silver and tending the roses. But the world refused to let her vanish. One July afternoon, while buying bread at a local bakery, a group of children rushed her, holding up toy black cards. "Miss Stephanie," one boy said breathlessly, "what would you buy first?" She smiled gently. "Bread. Just like I'm doing now." The bakery owner, overhearing, gifted her the loaf. A photograph of the moment, Stephanie holding the bread, children beaming, spread across the internet under the caption, "The woman who spent millions chooses bread." By August 2026, a new phenomenon emerged, the Stephanie Challenge. Across cities, people began giving up luxuries for a week, using the money to buy books, blankets, or meals for strangers. Videos of these acts flooded platforms. A London teenager gave his train fare to a homeless man and walked home, captioning, "Engine stall. Legs don't." The phrase, Stephanie's old quip to Williams, became a movement slogan. Governments noticed. France debated a Stephanie tax credit for citizens who donated directly to schools. In Japan, a mayor launched the Pearl Bracelet Project, gifting jewelry to orphanages in homage to her Croydon visit. Stephanie had not asked to lead a revolution, but one was following her anyway. Not everyone celebrated. Critics sharpened their knives. Economists argued her philosophy was naive, claiming generosity could not fix systemic inequality. Tabloids ran exposes. Stephanie's secret past? Though they found nothing more scandalous than unpaid library fines. One think tank accused Williams of staging everything as the most elaborate PR stunt in history. And in hushed corners of finance, bankers whispered a darker fear, that Stephanie's rise threatened the mythology of money itself. If humility outshone wealth, what was left for those who only had gold? On September 1, 2026, Stephanie was invited to speak at the United Nations in New York. Reluctant but persuaded by Williams, she stood before the assembly of world leaders in her plain dress. No jewelry, no spectacle. Her speech lasted 7 minutes. She said, "Wealth is not what you spend. It's what you spare. A gown fades, a yacht sinks, a diamond is stolen. But a blanket still warms. A book still teaches. A pearl still shines for someone who never expected to own one. If a maid can see this, why can't the mighty?" The hall fell silent. Then applause thundered, longer than any speech that week. That night, the New York Times ran the headline, "The Maid Who Lectured Kings." By autumn, Stephanie had become more than a woman. She was a symbol, unwilling but undeniable. Movements carried her name. Hashtags carried her words. Politicians quoted her while pretending they had thought of it first. Williams watched it all unfold from the estate, sipping brandy by the fire. When asked if he regretted creating the storm, he only murmured, "I gave away 6 cards to test others. I gave away the 7th to test myself." And in both trials, Stephanie won. Somewhere in London, Stephanie continued polishing silver, quietly wishing the world would forget her. But legends don't fade. They ripple. By October 2026, Williams's experiment had become folklore. But folklore is never safe. It attracts not only admirers, but imitators, and not all of them honest. In London, Shanghai, Dubai, and Los Angeles, a new industry began to bloom. The counterfeit black card trials. A Silicon Valley startup called Limitless Life launched a subscription service where members paid $999 a month to carry a sleek, jet black card embossed with gold lettering. The card promised exclusive experiences that test your true character. In reality, it bought overpriced dinners and tacky photo ops. Influencers paraded them, declaring themselves the next Stephanie. Meanwhile, in Dubai, a billionaire staged his own experiment, handing platinum cards to models at a rooftop party. By morning, they'd racked up $1.2 million in debt, mostly on champagne fountains and pet leopards. He called it performance art. And in Shanghai, underground clubs sold forged Williams black cards to the wealthy bored of being wealthy. Members staged mock trials, dressing maids in costumes to pretend they were Stephanie. It was grotesque theater, wealth parodying humility. When Stephanie first saw an ad for Limitless Life on her phone, she nearly laughed. By the second week, when news reached her of suicides tied to debt from these scams, she stopped laughing. She told Williams bluntly, "You've created a monster. They're selling hope in your name." Williams rubbed his temples. "I only ever meant it as a mirror." Stephanie's eyes hardened. Mirrors can cut if they're broken. On November 5, 2026, chaos erupted in New York. A counterfeit black card trial spiraled out of control when a hedge fund manager gave cards to 5 employees, ordering them to prove loyalty through spending. By week's end, one was bankrupt, another jailed, and a third hospitalized from stress. The scandal made global headlines, the dark side of the black card legacy. Protesters marched outside Williams's estate, demanding accountability. Williams faced cameras for the first time in months. His voice was low, almost weary. "I never asked the world to imitate me. But it seems I cannot ask it to stop either." Behind the noise, investigators uncovered something worse. Criminal networks were now using fake black card experiments to launder money. Fraudsters promised tests of character, but funneled millions into offshore accounts. Williams's idea had not just inspired copycats. It had become a cover for corruption. When the Home Office briefed him in private, Williams muttered, "So my experiment has grown teeth." Stephanie corrected him. "No, Mr. Williams. It's grown fangs." By December 2026, the situation reached breaking point. A counterfeit trial in Berlin ended with a participant shot during a botched robbery. The victim's final Instagram post showed him holding a fake black card, captioned, "About to prove my worth." The world turned. Where once Williams was seen as eccentric genius, now he was branded the accidental architect of greed. Stephanie, invited onto a BBC special, didn't defend him. Instead, she stared directly into the camera and said, "If you need a card to prove your worth, you've already lost it." The clip broke records, her calm rebuke cutting deeper than any scandal. The counterfeiters kept multiplying, but so did the resistance. Stephanie's words fueled a new wave of skepticism, with grassroots campaigns calling out false trials wherever they appeared. Williams, watching her from the quiet of his estate, finally admitted what he had never said aloud. "The world doesn't need me anymore. It needs her." Stephanie, polishing silver as though nothing had changed, sighed when told of his words. "It doesn't need me either, Mr. Williams. It just needs honesty. That's cheaper than black cards." But honesty, in a world drunk on spectacle, was the rarest luxury of all. By January 2027, the world had grown weary of black cards. What had once been thrilling, the spectacle of wealth, the rise and fall of heiresses, the humility of a maid, was now poisoned by scandal, greed, and crime. The backlash arrived not as whispers, but as thunder. On January 14th, the European Parliament convened an emergency debate. The motion's title was blunt: Legislation Against Black Card Exploitation. Politicians thundered. A German MEP declared, "These trials are nothing but psychological experiments on human weakness. We will not allow vanity games to destroy lives." By the end of the month, France passed the carte noire ban, outlawing promotional or staged black card experiments. Berlin followed. Brussels prepared sanctions against companies like Limitless Life. In Washington, a senator waved a counterfeit card during a hearing and shouted, "This isn't wealth. This is legalized humiliation." The crowd roared. If governments sharpened their knives, the press twisted them. The Times ran a headline, "Williams, visionary or villain?" The Guardian countered, "The maid who saved us from a billionaire's folly." Tabloids went for blood. Heiresses broke Maid rich. From silver Polish to power broker. Every interview Stephanie gave, few as they were, was dissected like scripture. When she told one journalist, "Money is loud but truth whispers," the phrase was printed on posters, memes, even coffee mugs. Williams, in contrast, found himself hounded. Protesters stood outside his estate chanting, "No more experiments. No more victims." On February 3, 2027, Williams was summoned before Parliament in London. The chamber was packed, cameras flashing. An MP grilled him. "Do you admit your experiment encouraged global chaos, counterfeit schemes, and suicides?" Williams, once confident, now looked his age. "I admit," he said softly, "that I underestimated the hunger of the world. I handed out mirrors, but I didn't consider what people would do when they hated their own reflection." The chamber fell silent. For a moment, pity flickered, then hardened into applause for his admission of guilt. Stephanie refused to testify. Instead, she wrote a letter to Parliament, only 3 sentences long. Mr. Williams gave the world a test. The world failed. The solution is not to ban the test. The solution is to teach people why they didn't pass. The letter went viral within hours. Schoolteachers printed it. Activists carried it on placards. One MP quoted it directly during debate, his voice trembling. This maid has more sense than all of us combined. Yet behind the headlines, darker forces stirred. Investigators uncovered that some governments themselves had staged secret black card trials, using them to entrap corrupt officials or test loyalty among elites. The very authorities now condemning Williams had dipped their own hands in the same fire. When this revelation leaked, the backlash doubled, not just against Williams, but against politicians worldwide. Citizens flooded streets from Madrid to Manila, chanting Stephanie's words, "Teach us why we failed." On March 10, 2027, the backlash reached its peak. Protesters stormed the London headquarters of Limitless Life, tearing down banners, smashing glass, and chanting Stephanie's name. Police tried to contain them, but the message was clear. The world no longer wanted imitations, nor manipulations. They wanted honesty, raw, unpurchased, unpolished. Stephanie, hearing of the riots, sighed and told Williams quietly, "You've built a storm you can't control. And somehow they think I'm the lighthouse." Williams replied, "And aren't you?" She shook her head. "No, Mr. Williams. I'm just holding a candle. The world needs to find its own flame." By spring 2027, the backlash era was in full swing. Laws were passed, companies collapsed, imitators vanished. Yet the hunger remained. The world couldn't let go of the story, the maid, the cards. And so the paradox deepened. In trying to end the black card phenomenon, society only fed its legend. Williams, reflecting in his study late one night, whispered into the silence, "I created an experiment to test 6 women. Instead, I've tested the world." And the world, like the women, had failed, except for Stephanie. By April 2027, it seemed the world had buried the black card phenomenon. Laws had been passed, counterfeiters arrested, Williams silenced. Stephanie begged for peace. But history has a way of resurrecting its own monsters. On April 22, 2027, in San Francisco, a tech consortium unveiled something they called the Infinite Wallet. It wasn't a card, but an app, sleek, black, branded with the symbol of infinity. Its promise, unlimited credit, but only for those whose social integrity score passed a proprietary algorithm. The pitch was chilling. We don't just test wealth. We test worth. Investors poured billions into it overnight. Influencers hailed it as the next evolution of Williams's experiment. And once again, the ghost of the black card stalked the earth. This time, digitized, scaled, and unstoppable. Stephanie read the news in a folded newspaper at breakfast. Her face paled. "They've learned nothing," she muttered. Williams, seated across from her, pushed his coffee aside. "No," he said grimly. "They've learned too much. I played with cards. They're playing with lives." For the Infinite Wallet didn't just track spending. It monitored behavior. Online posts, relationships, even private messages. One wrong move, one hint of dishonor, and access vanished. It wasn't temptation anymore. It was surveillance dressed as virtue. By May 2027, the Infinite Wallet had spread to 12 countries. Politicians called it a private credit score system. Activists called it tyranny with an app store. And then tragedy struck. In Singapore, a young woman live-streamed herself after being cut off by the wallet for low-integrity behavior. Her crime: donating anonymously to a banned charity. She wept into the camera. "I can't buy food for my children anymore." Hours later, she took her own life. The clip went viral, detonating outrage. Protesters flooded streets across Asia and Europe, chanting, "Stop the wallet." For the first time, people began to wonder, was Williams's original experiment, however flawed, less dangerous than this technological resurrection? Invited onto CNN, Stephanie was asked if she supported banning the Infinite Wallet. She answered slowly, "You can ban cards, apps, or systems. But you can't ban hunger. And you can't ban greed. As long as people believe they need permission to prove their worth, someone will sell it to them." The anchor asked, "So what's the solution?" Stephanie leaned forward. "Stop selling mirrors. Start teaching people how to see themselves." The line exploded across the internet. sparking both admiration and mockery. But it hit harder than any policy paper. And then came the revelation. Leaked documents showed that Williams himself had been approached by the tech consortium months earlier. They had offered to buy the rights to his story. The name, the brand, the myth. He had refused. But the leak painted him as complicit, reigniting fury against his name. Williams confessed privately to Stephanie. They wanted to resurrect my folly, and I didn't stop them. That makes me guilty, doesn't it? Stephanie replied. No, Mr. Williams. What makes you guilty is thinking you still control the monster you unleashed. On June 10, 2027, chaos ignited in London. Protesters hacked into the Infinite Wallet system, projecting giant slogans across skyscrapers. No more scores. Worth isn't an algorithm. Stephanie was right. Police clashed with demonstrators. Fires burned. By dawn, London looked like a battlefield not of nations, but of values. In the ashes of Piccadilly Circus, one protester held up a cardboard sign that captured the mood of the world. We don't need black cards. We need blackboards to learn again. When Stephanie saw the photo the next morning, she murmured, almost to herself, maybe they are learning after all. By midsummer 2027, the Infinite Wallet was suspended in several countries, but not dead. Its backers were too powerful, its lure too intoxicating. Williams, retreating deeper into isolation, confessed to Stephanie over evening tea. This resurrection. It proves something I didn't want to admit. I thought I tested 6 women. I thought I tested the world. But really, I tested human nature. And human nature failed. Stephanie placed the teapot down gently. Then maybe the test isn't over. Maybe it never ends. But we still have a choice, every day, not to fail it. Outside, the world burned with protests and promises. Inside, the Maid and the Millionaire sat quietly, 2 weary witnesses to the resurrection of a legend neither of them asked for. By July 2027, the Infinite Wallet had been suspended in parts of Europe, but in Asia, the Middle East, and even segments of the US, it was thriving. The tech titans called it the future of trust. Critics called it financial colonization. But beneath the neon billboards and glossy ads, another force was stirring. Quiet, decentralized, and relentless. The resistance. It began with whispers in university cafes, encrypted chats, and graffiti tags in back alleys. Worth isn't an algorithm. Hacktivists in Berlin formed the first cell, calling themselves the blank cards. Their symbol was simple, a plain white card, signifying freedom from both wealth and surveillance. In São Paulo, street artists painted Stephanie's face on walls, haloed not with jewels but with bread loaves and books. Underneath, the words, spend less, teach more. And in Manila, a group of students launched Project Lantern, distributing pamphlets of Stephanie's quotes as if they were scripture. One line became their rallying cry, stop selling mirrors. Start teaching people how to see themselves. Though she had never called for rebellion, Stephanie became the underground's accidental icon. When asked by a BBC reporter if she supported these movements, she frowned, I support people thinking for themselves. But I never asked to lead them. I'm just trying to fold laundry without headlines. Her modesty only fueled the myth. Within weeks, her silhouette appeared on protest banners from Cairo to Chicago. To the underground, she wasn't a maid anymore. She was a compass. On August 18, 2027, the blank cards hacked the Times Square jumbotrons in New York. For 5 minutes, every billboard went dark, then lit up with the words, we are not scores. We are souls. And in the center screen, a grainy black and white photo of Stephanie holding a loaf of bread. Crowds cheered. Tourists filmed. Police scrambled. But the message spread faster than they could contain it. That night, CNN ran the story with one chilling line. The underground has gone mainstream. Williams watched the events unfold from his study. Glass of brandy untouched. Stephanie, they're building you into a saint, he said one evening. Stephanie looked up from polishing silver. And you into a devil. He winced. I never wanted sainthood or damnation. Only truth. She gave him a small smile. Truth doesn't need a credit limit, Mr. Williams. That's why they're following it, not you. But the underground wasn't alone in using her image. Intelligence agencies began infiltrating cells, planting agents who distributed fake Stephanie quotes designed to sow division. Corporations hijacked her likeness for ethical luxury ads. One perfume brand launched a fragrance called Humility by Stephanie, complete with an ad showing a maid's apron floating in a cloud of mist. When Stephanie saw the commercial, she nearly choked on her tea. "They've turned me into soap," she exclaimed. Williams chuckled grimly. "At least it isn't yachts again." September 9, 2027. London. Tens of thousands gathered in Trafalgar Square for what became known as the White March. Every protester held up a plain white card. No slogans, no speeches, just silence. The effect was haunting. Drones captured the aerial view, a sea of white cards like fallen feathers across the square. Police moved in to disperse the crowd, but hesitation spread. Some officers joined, holding up blank note cards themselves. The world watched live as silence proved louder than any riot. That evening, the hashtag blank card rebellion surged to 200 million posts. By autumn 2027, the underground was no longer underground. It was a global tide, uncoordinated yet united, all flowing back to one source: the maid who had once bought pearls for orphans. Stephanie sighed when Williams showed her the footage of Trafalgar Square. "I never asked for this," she murmured. Williams studied her carefully. "And that's why they trust you. Because every other leader asks." Stephanie shook her head. "No, Mr. Williams. They don't trust me. They trust themselves, finally. I'm just a reminder that they could." And perhaps that was the most dangerous resurrection of all. By October 2027, the world's patience with the underground had run thin. What began as silent protests and graffiti had escalated into mass demonstrations, hacked billboards, and corporate boycotts. Politicians saw their authority wobbling. Tech titans saw profits shrink. Banks saw confidence evaporate. The establishment struck back. Hard. On October 12, Beijing declared the blank card symbol an act of economic sabotage, punishable by imprisonment. 2 weeks later, Berlin criminalized public possession of white cards, calling them tools of subversion. In Washington, hearings branded the underground as a financial terrorist network. One senator held up a white card during testimony and sneered, "This isn't protest. This is propaganda." Across capitals, riot police patrolled plazas, ready to stamp out even the faintest ripple of rebellion. Stephanie watched the headlines from her small room in the Williams estate, folding sheets as though they might absorb her unease. "They're arresting children for holding note cards," she muttered. "Children." Williams frowned. The state always fears symbols more than swords. Symbols last longer. Stephanie's reply was sharp. "And they think I made this symbol." "You didn't," Williams said softly. "But you made it matter." November 5, 2027. Guy Fawkes Night in London. Tens of thousands gathered again in Trafalgar Square, holding their blank cards against the firelit sky. Police moved in with water cannons, tear gas, rubber bullets. Chaos erupted. Footage showed teenagers shielding each other with umbrellas, grandmothers standing firm with cards clutched in wrinkled hands, and officers hesitating as chants of "We are not scores" drowned their commands. By dawn, 412 protesters had been arrested. Newspapers called it the White Riot. And for the first time, casualties were reported. 2 protesters never made it home. That night, Williams sat by the fire, glass trembling in his hand. "This is my fault," he whispered. "I gave the world a trick, and now blood stains it." Stephanie shook her head. "No, Mr. Williams. The blood isn't yours. It belongs to those who pulled the trigger." He stared at her, hollow-eyed. "But if I hadn't given out those 6 cards..." Stephanie interrupted, her voice firm. "If you hadn't, someone else would have. You didn't invent greed. You just gave it a stage." 2 weeks later, a shocking revelation tore through the underground. Leaked intelligence documents revealed that governments weren't just cracking down. They were infiltrating cells, staging fake protests, and even deliberately sparking violence to justify harsher laws. The underground wasn't simply under attack. It was being manipulated from within. When the truth broke, paranoia spread. Who was real? Who was a plant? Movements splintered. Trust frayed. Stephanie, reading the report, muttered bitterly, "They've turned honesty into a crime and lies into uniforms." On December 1, 2027, a global crackdown launched simultaneously. In London, Sao Paulo, Cairo, Manila, and New York, police raided suspected underground safehouses. Hundreds arrested. Dozens injured. Leaders disappeared into black vans, never to be seen again. But even in the storm, defiance survived. In Madrid, a little girl slipped through a police barricade, holding up a crayon-colored white card. Cameras captured the moment. The photo went viral. The caption read, "You can arrest the leaders. You can raid the houses. But you cannot stop the children." By Christmas 2027, the crackdown had pushed the underground into hiding. Symbols vanished from city squares, replaced by silence. Media declared victory. Politicians boasted the rebellion was crushed. But Williams, staring out a frosted window, knew better. "Revolutions don't die in prisons," he said quietly to Stephanie. "They hibernate." Stephanie, lighting a candle for the protesters lost, whispered back, "And spring always comes."